Hi, everybody. It's Susan again, and I'm back with what we'll call the early November transits and going up to the new moon, which will be in Scorpio on the 13th of November. I wanted to just point out a few things that are coming up today and then going forward a few days, because there's quite a lot of build up to this new moon, which actually is not so much a build up to the new moon as an extension of the eclipse that we had on the 28th of October. I always forget to say it, so I'm going to remember this time to say that if you don't know me already, my name is Susan, and I am a consulting astrologer. It's my preferred way to work, so I do regular appointments with individuals. I love doing that. And I do offer appointments online exclusively at the moment. It will have to now be in the beginning of 2024 because I've run out of 2023 with other commitments. And so in the beginning of 2024, I will also be offering a course in astrology for advanced beginners, early intermediate, that will help people read their own charts at the very minimum, and especially to understand how to read other charts. And I'm in the middle of translating a book and from French to English, and that's taking quite some time. But it's a book that I have found has made me a better astrologer. So I really want this book to be available in English. I will also be expanding on that. And so we'll be also working with that book in the course itself. And I'll be doing different sort of layers of the course in terms of how much you want to get involved. And so there'll be a more sort of light touch, if you like, just to learn the basic of astrology. Then there will be a more integrated approach, which will actually be a transformational course, which is about transforming you and your life. And this is a course that I've offered many times before called Align with Purpose, and in which we use the astrology quite personally. So I will be announcing more news about that in the next couple of weeks, and you will be able to sign up for that by the end of November. And in the meantime, you're always welcome to book a session with me. I'd be very happy to see you. I also have a very brief reading available for those of you who are finding it difficult to afford a reading with me, or who don't want a very long reading with me. I'm offering a 30-minute special reading for 2024. So just the transits, not a basic chart analysis, and just the transits based, of course, on your birth data for 2024 for 30 minutes, and at a very special low price, 60 euros, which is the least expensive way that you can work with me at the moment. So I'd be very happy to see you to do that, and I'll put that link in the description box below this video. So let's have a look now at the chart just for now, because we do have, I'm coming to you on the 5th of November. So even if you're seeing this afterwards, you'll still be in this energy. This is the first quarter moon. So the moon has just moved out of its exact first quarter phase. Here in Spain, we're seeing it in the beautiful blue sky. Wherever you are, you might be able to see that in the sky as well, if skies are clear. And so we've got the moon in Leo squaring the sun in in Scorpio. And just today, the moon is also squaring Mars, a very strong Mars in Scorpio, keeping in mind that the moon is ruled by the sun when it's in Leo. And so that square makes it quite impactful, especially because the sun is conjunct Mars, which is in its own domicile. At the same time, today we have Mercury in Scorpio, which is exactly, it's moving out now of an exact opposition. It's in a very tight, just over 1 degree, 1.5 almost degrees of opposition yesterday. So the 4th of November, it would have been exact. And this is all talking about this tension, this extreme pressure that's building. We also have Jupiter retrograding away from the opposition to the sun. So that was also in a direct opposition on the 2nd of November. I posted about that in the community page. We still have Lilith in conjunction with the North Node, and that will continue for several weeks. It's been ongoing for several weeks already. It's a period of time that we're in where there's quite a lot of change, an enormous amount of aggravation even, and frustration in the air, all of which is expanding tensions, because also we still are within orb of this square to Pluto. We're moving out of that now. In November, we're seeing less and less of this Pluto square, but the work has been done. The Pluto squaring the nodes is really very powerfully about changing things on the ground, and we've seen that all around us. We see that change in the first quarter square, and we see that change especially because the moon is also squaring Mars and Mercury. We have so much transformational capacity with this in this era. Think of this period of time as just part of the eclipse season. Eclipses, just like all important transits, nothing really just happens in the moment. There's a moment-to-moment unfolding, and eclipses unfold over time. And especially in this particular case, the energy of the eclipses is continuing through most of November, and particularly strongly up until this new moon. So we're going to be seeing the turmoil that we have globally for quite some time without resolution. Now, Saturn is in a kind of a static position since it's stationed yesterday on the 4th of November. It's not moving for a couple of days. It doesn't even change 1 minute of a degree. And then gradually between the 4th and let's say the 9th, 10th, it only picks up 2 or 3 minutes of a degree. After the new moon, it starts to pick up speed. And so from that point on, it will start to advance much more noticeably back through Pisces. Just at the moment, Saturn is in an opposition to Lilith. So Lilith moves quickly through the chart. So at the moment, Lilith is in the beginning of Virgo. Lilith, of course, is always moving in relationship between the sun and the moon. So it's not in a particular sign for very long. And because of the moon's rapid movement. And so Lilith opposing Saturn, somebody asked that question the other day when I did the video of the Saturn direct station. And I'm very glad that you asked that question, because I had intended to point that out. When Saturn is opposing Lilith, we really do have this intensity around our sense of justice and fairness, our sense of what we feel prepared for or capable of. And this is part of this whole story here. We're really in an experience that is so common to everyone in the world right now. There's this kind of overall frustration with how the outer world is appearing to us. I don't think there's any one country in the world that is living in a state of satisfaction at this point. Now what we're seeing is with Israel, for example, there's a flashpoint in a way that even the Ukraine war didn't manifest. It did to a certain extent, but here what we're seeing is an absolute crystallization of what we could say even began 2 years ago, roughly. Yeah, a year and a half ago, let's say, with the war in Ukraine. But this is different. Now, what's happened is with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which I also I do not call unprovoked, but we're still calling it an invasion. It was illegal, but it was not unprovoked. That provoked a world division that we're now seeing in spades around Israel. And these are times where we're going to see something accelerate around a changing of the guard and a changing of the alliances around the world. I'm going to do more mundane astrology. I am looking for somebody who is as good at astrology as they are of understanding the world. It's not been an easy task, but I think I have found somebody. So I'm going to hope that we can find some time between now and the end of the year so we can do an actual report on 2024 coming up of mundane astrology. And I just want to point out so many of the energies that we're seeing here. If I just pull up, for example, the chart of Israel, let's put Israel in the middle. So earlier when I did the Hamas attack, I used the noon chart for Israel, which I find is actually, it speaks to the soul, let's say, of Israel. The 4 o'clock chart is the one that is where they actually announced the state of Israel. So this is the one that resonates very, very strongly with this attack as well. So I'm now reverting to this one. I bow down to the 4 o'clock Israel chart. So 4 o'clock on the 14th of May, 1948, and the establishment of Israel. And this one is being highly aspected right now. So meaning 5th of November, and then again at the new moon of November. It's been highly aspected by both of the eclipses, but it continues to be so in a very powerful way. Uranus is exactly opposing Chiron. It is still conjunct the sun. This is something we will see conclude, let's say, or manifest in the spring when Uranus comes back to the 23rd degree point, where it's stationed at the end of August, where it's stationed retrograde. But I do think we're seeing the beginning of the end of what Israel's identity is in the eyes of the world. And we're seeing, not just because of the Uranus sun, but also just today and this week, for much of this cycle between, let's say, the time that Saturn stations and the new moon on the 13th, we're seeing the sun crossing the south node, which tells much the same kind of picture of changing of goals, changing of image, changing of direction, even changing of values, you could describe in the second house, but it's still Scorpio. So there's something that is hidden. It remains unclear. And all of that, and the Sun North Node, Uranus and Jupiter in the 8th house still continues the theme of things not being clear. This is something that is changing Israel for a long, long time to come. I don't think we're going to see the consequences of that until the spring of 2024, when Uranus passes back over that point. And indeed, that will actually probably manifest around the time that we have the new moon in Taurus, which will correspond to the recent full moon that we had as an eclipse. So big changes in the world. There's nothing much going to change as far as I can tell, as long as Saturn is not really advancing. And I also did say in the video that I did about Saturn, I did say also that as long as Jupiter is retrograde, we're also not really going to fully see the Saturn effort or the Saturn change come about. That boost from Jupiter moving direct will also start to really manifest outwardly the changes that Saturn has been working its way towards, but whether it be in your personal life or in the universal situation we're all experiencing. So big times, big times. One thing to point out is that Venus, of course, is still opposing Neptune. I did mention a lot of these things in the Saturn direct station video. Venus in opposition to Neptune is clouding one's understanding of relationships, one's understanding of values. Be careful also, because Neptune and Mercury are very tightly trining this week. That's a trine that will perfect in about 3 or 4 days. So I think that perfects on the 9th. And did I write that down? I didn't write that down, but anyway, it'll perfect in a couple of days. And let's say it's already, in any case, in orb, very strongly in orb. And what that suggests is that we're not able to really discern the truth. Mercury is in Scorpio, and it's right next to Mars in Scorpio and the Sun in Scorpio, all of which are affected directly by Uranus. So whatever you're hearing, just hang on to it very lightly and don't assume that you understand anything of what is going on. It's impossible to talk about current events with any certainty. There are a lot of things that seem very clear. There are certainly things that point in multiples in one or another direction. so that we can be more sure, but not certain entirely. And I think that only after in the new year, in 2024, will we have much more clarity around what is actually going on right now. But what we can say is that there is going to be a monumental shift, not only in our global situation, but in our consciousness and how we perceive a lot of things, how we perceive much of the world. We also have Mercury in a sextile to Pluto, and that's powerful insight. It's powerful, incisive thinking. Pluto is in a strong trine to Venus, and so that also is a very strong signature about power dynamics in relationships of all kinds. Of course, if we're talking globally, then that includes diplomatic relationships, but also finances, and this is about money too. And so we also are seeing that Venus is in a trine. It's a broad trine now, but it's still in a trine to Uranus. And so finances, relationships, everything is changing. We saw, for example, just in the last couple of days that several South American countries have formerly supportive of Israel have broken diplomatic ties and recalled their ambassadors to Israel, which is a very strong statement. Doesn't sound like much, but it is diplomatically, it's a very strong statement of displeasure with what is going on. And these are things that have not been manifesting in previous times. So I do think that we're living in a different era now. Things are shifting, and the tolerance for certain things is shifting as well. The United States has been called out by a number of different governments and organizations as well. So when we talk here about Israel, we're talking, of course, about the government of Israel, not the people of Israel. And when we talk about the United States, we're obviously talking about the government of the United States, not the people. And there has been an enormous amount of disgust around the stance, let's say, of Western European governments as well as the American government in this circumstance, which is clearly hypocritical compared to the stance that has been taken around Ukraine. And that's something to bear in mind, because everyone has their breaking point, and I think we're now seeing that globally. Certainly in the last year, we have been seeing that. I think that has been the Pluto squaring the nodes energy that we've seen in 2022. There's a breaking point, and this is now breaking away relationships, moving towards a much more independent way of seeing things based on change of the old status. So if we look at that from the South Node point of view in Libra, North Node in Aries, and the demolition, the complete and utter transformation of what we knew, what we thought we could rely on in terms of formal alliances and formal agreements, the game has shifted enormously. So all of that just to say for the overview right now, and I want to come now to some days ahead. So let's go a bit at a time. Let's go to the 9th, 10th. Actually already before. So on the 8th, we have Venus moving into 8th of November GMT. Venus moves into Libra, and she gains enormous dignity, moving away from Virgo, where she's in her detriment. She's considered to be, or rather in her fall. She's exalted in Pisces, she's in fall in Virgo. And I do follow the rulerships, and I think it's because of rulerships that you get a much more accurate read of a chart. I've heard some excellent astrologers say that you shouldn't bother with rulerships because it's kind of an old-fashioned judgmental way of looking at it. It's a misunderstanding of rulership. So rulership and exaltation really just tells you what will be the quality of results that you can expect from the planet. And again, it really proves itself to be an added element that we can't ignore. And so when we have Venus now moving into better dignity, we could say, well, on the one hand, that's a good thing, except that Venus is now co-present with the South Node that she's ruling. And the South Node is always problematic. The nodes in general are always problematic. And so however much dignity Venus now has, she is moving towards the South Node. And for me, that's not enough to feel like there's a strong resolution to anything that's going on. And I'm not suggesting by any means that nothing is possible here, but I really do not expect any major change in the situation through diplomatic means. I think that we're going to see a lot of the changes that we might see will be coming from some serious aggression, some incidents that will be extremely disruptive. And there will be at a certain point, a breaking point again, where somebody's hand will be forced. I do think that Israel is in a disastrous position right now compared to the neighbors surrounding it and much of the rest of the global community, which is super concerned about this situation. And so it's not doing any favors. This is something, again, that is going against the people of Israel itself, and is only benefiting a small handful of people. And I think this is what the general energy is showing. The people are waking up and realizing that this is no longer what they're being told is no longer true. It's taken a while, because that's certainly been about 2 decades that some of the rest of us have been seeing this coming, but better late than never. And I think sometimes things just have to get really extreme before people actually wake up to the situation that their governments are putting them in. We need to keep in mind that whenever you're told to hate, there's something behind that. It's going against humanity to be told to hate. So anytime you hear that kind of injunction or a descriptive of someone as being subhuman, you're dealing with a kind of a fascist energy that is trying to control you. So keep very, very aware of what's going on, especially in November. Because this is the energy. Fascist energy is almost like a description of what we're seeing here in Scorpio. Can be very highly dogmatic. We haven't even got to the new moon yet. The moon in Scorpio can be extremely judgmental, extremely critical, highly dogmatic, and Mars ruled and on top of that, it's going to be conjunct Mars, which we'll see in a minute. So we're seeing as the week progresses, we then get to the 10th of November, where we have this square. Now we have the beginnings of the squares to Saturn that become exact. So there's already an energy of square all through the few days before and after the new moon, but Mercury squaring Saturn is a difficult choice. It's a difficult decision that needs to be made. It's something that causes tension in otherwise fraternal situations. It's Mercury in Sagittarius can also be around a higher principle or higher higher order of knowledge or wisdom, philosophy, etc. It's also an energy of international affairs, and so that Mercury squaring Saturn can really have an impact in terms of having to make a choice that actually is not an easy one. It's what we call a Hobson's choice, where there's no good outcome. We also have a sextile between Mercury and Venus, which at least from that point of view can make that easier. And in the sense that there will be some thoughtfulness going in there and perhaps some grace in terms of how the decisions are taken. We can see that in a personal level as well, not just collective. So think of this from your own point of view. If you're having difficulties, if you are stuck in a choice that needs to be made, then keep in mind that it's there are times in life where we just have to make a sacrificial choice. We have this saying, which is between a rock and a hard place, and sometimes there's just no comfortable place to be. You just have to make that decision. Then we come up to the energy of sorry, hang on, let's just go straight to the moon. Where are we here? No, we want to go to the moon. I'm going to just take the chart that I created here. There we go. It's easier than we have the exact chart. Okay, so The new moon is happening in tropical Scorpio, and that's on the 13th of November at 9:27, roughly, universal time. And so that is essentially for most of the world, it will be on the 13th of November, I think, even in the West Coast, perhaps in the middle of the Pacific. If anybody's watching, that might be just before midnight on the 12th, but let's say it's basically the 13th for everybody. We do have a really sticky chart for a new moon, keeping in mind that the new moon sets off an energy of new beginnings, that the cycle of a new moon is a cycle where something is ending and beginning simultaneously. You're moving through this phase of letting go and picking up something new. And keeping also in mind that this is the continuation of the eclipse cycle. So if you go back to the 14th of October, and the days around that, we're still in the middle of all of that. We're still in the middle of dealing with the energy of that time. So this is an ongoing story through most of November, and I don't think that we're going to really find a whole lot of a change in energy until we get into December. Or even January, to be honest, because that's when Jupiter stations direct at the end of December, and things will definitely shift in a hopefully more positive direction. We do have this opposition to the Sun, the Moon, and Mars. Again, that opposition to Uranus. Now, those oppositions are also really challenging. I actually have I'm part of that generation of Pluto and Uranus conjunct. I have them almost exactly conjunct in Virgo and opposing my Sun by something like 5 degrees and my Mars by 7 degrees or something like that. So I have a weak version of this in my chart, but I can vouch for that being tense and difficult and creating a lot of instability in life. Uranus moon is perhaps even more unstable because there's an emotional, psychological instability. If we look at that from a global point of view, that's the public, that's the people. The moon is representing the people, the sun representing, of course, leaders of all kinds. And that instability is baked into this new lunar cycle of at least 28 days. Of course, with Mars there ruling the new moon, that makes it all the more intense. And that, again, is one of those words that you just keep hearing me repeat again and again whenever we're speaking about Scorpio. I would really love to I got to get my thesaurus and figure out how I can say intense in different ways, because it gets boring to say it. But this intensity is unstable as well. And so what it means is that there can be such a high emotionality, but the problem with a new moon is it's the dark phase of the moon. And when the moon is dark, we don't see clearly. We don't have all the information. We don't have the details yet. We don't know really what's coming. Traditionally, around the time of a new moon, when I advise people to, if they're going to be setting their intentions, for example, new moon intentions, I suggest that people wait in that old traditional way. You wait until you see the crescent moon. And so that means that the moon and the sun are separating sufficiently that you can start to just see the sliver of the moon in the sky. And once you see that, that's usually within 2 to 3 days of the moon. The lunar phase always lasts roughly 3 days on either side of the lunation. This it gives you the time to digest the change, to digest the new desire, to digest and process the shift, because it's a shift in consciousness. We're talking about sun and moon here, representing our consciousness and our psyche, and the personality, the mind, the emotions, and all of that takes time to process and digest. Now with Mars there's an impatience as well, and then you magnify that by an opposition from Uranus, and there's just an intensity around that pressure for something to change. But it's not a good time to rush into change. So there's too much unstable energy. I suggest that if you have a new project, or if you have anything that you really want to get underway, that you give it a good 3 or 4 days, if you can, before you do that. And just especially if you're looking to start something that you are thinking in terms of like establishing a new business or establishing something long lasting, you don't want Uranus involved. You don't want the instability baked in. And it's the day after, the 14th of November, the sun will be exactly opposing Uranus. And yeah, it's you don't want that energy in a natal chart. I mean, if you get it in a natal chart, okay, that's your karma, but this is not, it's don't choose that energy, let's say. And then also choose to withdraw a little bit in terms of what you think you know about things. We still have Venus in a sextile, very strong sextile to Mercury. So there is an opportunity, hopefully, for people to be a little circumspect and reflect a little deeply, more deeply than usual. Holding back judgment would be a really good idea. The only thing is that with Mercury in Jupiter ruled Sagittarius, people jump to conclusions very often. And this is problematic because, as I said, we are being blinded by this energy of Neptune. It's been going on for a very, very long time. And it's, we just don't know what's going on. And so just hold your horses. We can't be that certain about what is happening. We're a couple of days after the new moon. We're also going to have Mars sextiling Pluto. It's in a broad sextile even during the new moon, which is quite intense, but it's building up to that. And then, of course, Mars is trining Neptune, which is another way of saying that it's difficult to know which way to go. And so often the actions that we take can be based on something misguided or delusional or just uninformed, misinformed, uninformed. Or at the very least, it can also be that there's a feeling of giving up as well, giving up. What's the point? Why bother? All of which are self-defeating. So it would be a really good idea to just give a couple of days after, just do your usual stuff, do what you have to do every day, and don't start something new. Don't get into new projects at this time. What are the other things here we've got? Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say, yeah, the conjunction between Sun and Scorpio is going on for a long time. So even before the new moon, we've got this very strong conjunction, Mars and Sun. And then as Mars emerges away from the Sun, it's coming away from the beams. And shortly after, if we go to the transits, we see that Mars is moving away. And let's see, when does it go in? It's going to ingress along with the Sun. So we're still in a Mars and Sun conjunction until the end of November. And honestly, it continues into December. So we're looking at a time where we're not able to really get the best out of Mars either. Mars under the beams it can be a sneaky energy. It's an energy that is not going to allow for clarity of action. Again, it's that the brilliance of the Sun is burning Mars, so we're not getting the best out of Mars. And so we want Mars to be several degrees away from the Sun. So we're looking at after the first week of December, before we really start to see an effective Mars, which is not going to be under the beams. And when Mars then is reborn, so this is at the same time of this new moon, we have this rebirth of Mars. Mars has just gone, is going to be going through the Sun, rebirthing itself, which happens once every 2 years. And so there's such a lot of martial energy, a rebirth of martial energy that can be in your life an action or some kind of a drive for something new. As I said, fantastic, great. Write everything down, get all kinds of inspiration. This is also This is the other potential, the higher potential for the sun, and Uranus is great inspiration. But just don't take action yet, and you'll find that the results will be clearer and better the farther away Mars gets from the sun. So we're really looking into the early part of December. By the early part of December as well, we also have Neptune stationing direct, and that will also transform the energy. So Neptune is stationing. Sorry, I should have written this one down too, but Neptune is stationing direct on the 6th, it looks like, 5th, 6th of December. And so that will also shift the energy. There will be a pivot and then a shift of energy once again at the beginning of December. So still we're hanging on for Jupiter to station direct, because we keep in mind that Jupiter is strongly influencing Saturn, and we're not going to get the clarity of action, I think, as long as Jupiter is still retrograde, which is until the 31st of December. So let's come back once again and see if we've covered everything here for the Scorpio new moon. Check my yeah, Mercury moves into Sag. I mentioned that that was the 10th of November. So although that's a slightly better dignity, it also, again, like I mentioned, that can be that tendency to jump to conclusions. So be careful, as always, as I know you are, not to believe what you see on the news, not to believe, latest bulletins. Give everything lots of thought and consideration. Mercury in Sagittarius jumps the gun, is a little over ambitious, can expand the truth a little bit. The fish was this big. And so be careful of the, that kind of trickery is rife at this moment. And so we are to be vigilant. And I'd say that that's something that applies very, very strongly in this time, but particularly as long as we've still got Neptune in Pisces. We want to be really, really clear of how many sources can you find? A variety of sources, not all coming from the same ethos or the same worldview. So I think that was it for all of these things. We've got the Sun is conjunct Mars. I mentioned that for several days. We're going with this Sun conjunct Mars, which is essentially a theme for November. So it's a big deal. The Sun kind of tracking Mars tracking the Sun, whatever way you want to look at that. And so it's also that building to a sextile with Pluto. That's something, while it's squaring the Sun, building to a sextile with Pluto, that's going to be an intense time as well. Do we dare go there? Let's have a look. So while this Sun is tracking Mars, so the exact Sun-Mars conjunction is going to be on the 18th of November, but it continues, as I mentioned. It's exact for... Sorry about that, folks. I had somebody come to the door. So, it's busy around here lately. It must be all that Uranus energy. So tracking Mars, Sun all the way through the last part of November. We're basically, that's the theme of November, and then we're looking at the ingress of Mars and Sun to join up with Mercury, and I think that's the 22nd. 22nd is the solar ingress, and then Mercury ingressing afterwards. So on the 24th. Right. So all that time when they ingress now into Sag, that period of 22, 23, 24, very powerfully already, actually from the 20th, essentially, they're very, very powerfully squaring Saturn. That's going to be a really intense energy. And then, of course, at the same time, they are sextiling Pluto. So busy days, dynamic. Dynamic is the word. Dynamic things changing, alliances changing, people changing priorities. Very unsettled energy. And like the Chinese say, the crisis is also an opportunity. So whenever you do experience something like that, you can actually decide, well, you know what, I'm going to just jump in and make those changes that I wanted to make all that time. We then have, as we keep going forward, we've got Venus joining up with the South Node. Wait a minute. Venus on the South Node is at the very end. I think it's exact on the 28th of November. Why is that not lining up? So anyway, let's say it was the 29th of November, and we're going to see when that actually happens. So Venus and the South Node on the 29th of November at roughly just after 4 p.m. Universal Time. That Venus South Node is a massive change in terms of our values, priorities around relationships, our alliances. This can be an issue of finance as well in the economy. Some big issues happening around the 29th. Now there's a full moon just before that on the 28th. And so it's going to also be part of that chart, which I will read more for, but just keeping in mind that a lot of November is going to be about shape-shifting in a way that is quite extreme, like really, really new and different. And so if you are ready for something to change, this is not time to make these little tweaks. This is a time to really establish a new way of showing up, both in society as well as in your own life. So, keep that courage. That's the one thing that this new moon can provide with us in a really powerful way, is courage, having a sense of the capacity to transform and overcome. This is Scorpio energy, very, very powerful, concentrated energy for transformation, regeneration. Remember that in the tradition of astrology, in the ancient astrology, this image of Scorpio was not the scorpion, but it was the phoenix. And the phoenix then rises out of the ashes of difficulty and the fires of transformation. And that is what this energy of regeneration is. So we have to tap into that higher aspect of Scorpio for our personal growth. And also collectively, of course, we want to tap into that. So don't bemoan the changes that are happening around the world. Maybe you're on the wrong side. Maybe you thought you were on the right side, but turns out you were on the wrong side of history. And so wouldn't that be good then to change? That's always an interesting wake up. So this would be something to meditate on around the time of this new moon, and to reflect on what it is that you would like to change as well, how you would like to transform yourself, how you would like to grow and overcome. Scorpio also is about fears and psychological projection and the shadow side of ourselves. And so, you can reflect on that too. What is being shown to me now? The insightful energy of Uranus is also something that in a flash you can learn from. I'm going to go house by house and sign by sign and show you. For some of you, it's going to be a very profoundly psychological transformation. And that's welcome, because we do need to make those shifts. Of course, the challenge is that Scorpio and Taurus are fixed energies. And the fixed energies don't really like to change. They like things to be their way, and that's why they get the reputation for being stubborn and digging in their heels. And so, the change often has to come through something really powerful, something really, really shocking. And that's where we bring in the Uranus energy. So we're in the thick of it. We're here. We've signed up for this somehow. So hang in there. You can use that courage when you turn within, especially when things on the outside feel extremely intimidating, extremely difficult to bear. So let's have a look sign by sign and see how this is shaping up for each of us. So I'm just going to back it up here and get to Aries as the rising sign. So whoops, we can begin there with Aries. Super. How did we not get, we're going to have to go minute by minute here. It's not working. It's Aries. There we go. 1 minute off. All right. So Aries, sun, moon, and rising. You have this happening in your 8th house. It's the most quintessential energy of Scorpio, of course, for Aries rising in particular, but the 8th house from the sun or moon. And we have that triple energy of transformation in your house of transformation, in the sign of transformation. And so we really are, for Aries people, looking at quite a big shift in terms of your psychological states. Perhaps it's a change in terms of what you might be overcoming around fears or around secrets. Can be also what you're discovering about relationships, what you're discovering about what you share with others in terms of resources or support. Maybe you're realizing you either need more support or you're not getting the support from other people. Mars in the 8th is usually indicative of challenges in terms of relationships or support, some kind of severing or cutting or lack of. And given that Uranus is in your 2nd house, retrograde now, Jupiter retrograde in the 2nd, there might be something that has been a little bit sticky that you needed to go over to resolve. Could be just the temporary situation and things will resolve and move forward after a period of renegotiation, or it can be that you realize, actually, this is something new has to come in here. Things need to change. And so this period of time will be really powerful for you if you do need to make a change around intimate relationships or around intimacy in general, or around whatever you hold dear with other people, whatever you share. If there is anything to do with an inheritance or some kind of money that's coming from another source, it looks like there might be some obstacle there or some need for you to stand up and work hard to resolve that, work hard to deal with that. Mars is your ruler. So you're familiar with this energy, but you might just find that it becomes easier when Mars moves into the 9th house, and then you don't have to do so much fighting or struggling or pushing to get the thing that you want. And maybe you even discover that it's actually no longer what you want. So you also have, of course, Saturn has just stationed direct in your 12th house. And the 12th house is the house of loss. It's a house of self-undoing. It's the house of our hidden psychological situation. There can be something here that you're discovering as well that is related to this 8th house moon, where you start to realize there's something you're connecting to, what you have been doing yourself or what you have been potentially desiring, or who has been problematic potentially in your life, because the 12th house is hidden enemies as well. And since the 8th house is a house of shared resources and intimacy with somebody else, potentially marriage as well, marriage or business partners, you might be realizing that there's something that needs to change around that. It would not be necessarily new. It's just that you're feeling more what it is that needs to be done as a resolution to all of that. So these are intense times for Aries, and especially so because you're being very strongly activated to change, to grow, to see yourself in a bigger way with the North Node moving through your 1st house. So make the most of this personal offering for transformation. Try to really dig deep, Aries. Slow it down. Because often with Aries, you're impatient to make change. You're impatient for things to happen. You might, again, have a tendency to think you already know in advance. Now, Mercury's in the 9th house in Sagittarius, so there can be this sense of, I already know, don't tell me. So slow it down. and recognize that this may not be the time to jump to conclusions, that you might need to just surrender a little bit, especially because Venus is in the 7th. So you can get, if you do this well, you can get some good cooperation from other people with Venus in the 7th. You can get some real benefit out of that. You're definitely being asked to show up differently in relationships overall, while the North and South nodes are in the 1st and 7th house axis. So busy times, Aries, busy times. What is your ruler? You know this energy, you understand your mission. So should you choose to accept it, there you are. All right, we're going to shift this back to ours, and now we're going to move to Taurus. For Taurus, sun, moon, and rising signs, you've got the new moon happening in your 7th house, along with Mars, of course. This can put some pressure on you within relationships or on other people who you are relating to already. This won't have been coming as a surprise either, Taurus, because you already have Jupiter and Uranus in your 1st house. So you're changing quite dramatically, and that's bringing about quite a lot of change in all of your relationships. And so there's something that you're waking up to, something that you are desiring to change, something new that will regenerate relationships for you. This can be business partnerships, of course. This 7th house is a house of business, so can be very helpful in many ways. And especially as your ruler is in the 6th house, this can also have something to do with work. There might be something that you realize, okay, I need to stand up for myself, or I need to, on the contrary, open up to change in these working relationships or in my life partnerships. So we also have, of course, Saturn moving now direct in your 11th house. It's going to take some time for that to pick up speed, but Saturn is going over your hopes and dreams for the future, where there may have been a sense of confusion or a sense of being held back. Now there's a better clarity around that. And because it's in a trine, Saturn is trining, at least in a house-based trine, your house of relationship. This may have something to do with your relationships in many ways. It certainly picks up what you need to do, how you need to expand, because Jupiter, which is ruling Saturn, is in your 1st house. So you're personally playing a role in this change in terms of your hopes for the future. That 11th house is also friends and groups and associations that you keep that are not so intimate, but they're based on an idea, based on a belief, or based on a project together, political or religious or artistic or whatever. So there's something here that is transforming your relationships in a way that is fresh and new. And this new moon energy is extremely powerful for you. Your ruler is in strong dignity in Libra, but Venus in the 6th is in a challenging situation, because Venus in the 6th tends to give more than she receives. And the South Node, which is there already since July, is saying, check that out. Are you focusing in on what you actually need in terms of your deeper needs, rather than always giving away the family jewels, as it were? So Taurus, this is something that you might contemplate as well. There may be some challenge in relationships, largely because your boundaries were crossed without you realizing or without you acting upon it, and now there's something that you want to change. Or the reverse, and that's coming from your partner, and your partner's like, hey, enough is enough. So whichever side of that fence you're on, something's changing here for you in relationships. So best of luck there, Taurus, and I'll see you in the next video. Gemini, this is happening, the new moon is happening in your 6th house. This is for Gemini's sun and moon and rising. So especially for the ascendant, this is happening in your 6th house of everyday work. This is obstacles and challenges. So actually you want to have difficult planets, or what we can call the malefics. That's not a judgment on the planet, it's about the effect of the planet. So Mars is a malefic, and it's better to have that in these difficult houses because it gives you courage and determination. Just beware that also, because it's Mars, there can be issues of health, inflammation, and so on. Ideally, you don't want to have health interventions around a new moon or full moon. Technically speaking, it's not a good time. The energy is unstable. These are Sandhi periods, these periods of change, periods where things are moving from one energy to another. That instability is something that's magnified by the fact that Uranus is in opposition to that. And so I just avoid anything that you don't, that you won't want to enter into any kind of transformation or operation or medical intervention if you can avoid it. Obviously, if there's an emergency, you deal with that, but not something elective. With Mars in the sixth, there can also be something that you realize, or some tension that comes up with work colleagues or people who work for you, employees of any kind. This is where you might find difficulties if there are contracts. This would not be a good time to start a new contract because that energy of instability would be built into it. And with Jupiter and Uranus in the 12th house, it's not clear who's got your back. It's not clear who's on your side. So you want some time to pass before doing anything long-lasting. Certainly, this can often be an opportunity as well, because there could be some new venture, a new job, a new opportunity for some kind of growth in your career, because Saturn also from the 10th house has just stationed direct. And so while we have all this 6th house activity, your everyday work, your everyday kind of habits, and how you show up every day, is being in many ways supported also by a change in your house of career. So there can be either a change that's forced upon you, or a change that you realize is like the dam has burst and it's time now to just sort this out. I have to leave this job. It's got this kind of take this job and shove it energy. Just that song came to mind. And so have that in your mind as you go forward. Don't go, it's definitely not the moment to be yelling at your boss, but just to say that you might have at least internally clarified what it is that you want, and then you can start to take action on that in the couple of days around this new moon. Now, the new moon is on a Monday, so don't go grumpy into work and then yell at the boss, like I said. So don't look at this, because I'm just going hour by hour to catch the ascendant. So the new moon is on the 13th. What's your ruler doing? Your ruler is in the 7th house. That's in opposition to your sign. And so that can have you focusing quite a lot on other people, lots of engagement, lots of energy with other people. It's not always easy when your ruler is in the opposite sign, because again, that suggests that the ruler itself is put at a disadvantage. In this case, it's considered to be in detriment. And so that Mercury is, again, where there might be times where you jump to conclusions, where you're having discussions with people that might border on arguments, where you kind of wonder, was that really worth it? This is not worth burning bridges at this time. You also have Venus in the 5th, so that can actually help you a lot with that slightly awkward Mercury. Venus can smooth out some rough edges from the 5th house. That's what you prefer, what makes you happy, the things that bring you joy, your intimate, your sort of love relationships are there in the 5th house, your children, and so on. So this can also have something perhaps to do with children. Mercury also represents children. So maybe there's something here for you around children if you have them. But keeping in mind also that the South Node is moving through the 5th house. And so you're here really to focus quite a lot more on how you contribute out in the world, how you reach out into society. Now that's what Mars is showing you from your everyday life, how you're reaching out now through that North Node in the 11th. maybe a new set of dreams, a sense that what you thought you wanted before just isn't doing it for you. And now there's something new that needs to come in, new groups of people, great opportunity for you to expand into new connections, new ways of connecting with people. I've spoken about this quite a lot in terms of the nodes changing. So look at the nodal axis video that I did in the late spring around the Aries Libra axis for more information about that. But this can tie into how you show up every day with that Mars conjunction, very strong Mars conjunct the moon, which is also ruling that north node. Right, so Gemini, good luck with the new moon, and I'll see you in the next video. Cancer, this is in trine to your sign. You're a water sign as well as Scorpio. So this is happening in your 5th house. The trinal houses are considered lucky, helpful, supportive. It's got the quality of Jupiter, the trinal houses. And you have all of this happening in the 5th house of your creativity, what you might describe as love affairs or romantic relationships. So from that point of view, it's nice having a new moon conjunct Mars, because there can be some intensity around that, can be some something really dynamic coming into your love life or your creative passions as well. If you're into sports, athletics, competition, hobbies that are competitive or hobbies that really drive your passions, this is also fantastic. It gives you a really big boost in terms of that kind of thing. And certainly with Jupiter and Uranus in your 11th house, there can be an energy for growing your connections with people who are of like mind, or people who are sharing passions, sharing hobbies as an expression of that 5th house. Both of them are retrograde, so that's not necessarily going to be very, very powerful until 2024, but it's already something that you can set yourself in motion going in the direction of this new thing. Keeping in mind that if you do meet somebody at this time, so Uranus is opposite the new moon, and very strongly opposite Mars at this time. And that bakes into a new encounter some kind of instability, surprise, shock, etc., which can actually work in your favor in the sense that it can shake you up. It shakes up the, let's call it the torpor of every day, the thing that seems to be needing shaking up. Uranus will certainly come and do that. But Uranus is retrograde, so it's not only shaking this up, but by the time Uranus comes back to this point, you might find that the relationship has served its purpose, or it has fizzled out, or you've discovered something about the relationship or the individual that is not what you thought it was. So enjoy, take it lightly. Don't put that down payment on the wedding yet. So just to keep that in mind, this instability that's built into this new moon will affect whatever projects you have. So listen to the introduction to make sure you understand about that, the wait and see thing, because we've got then Mercury kind of jumping to conclusions in your 6th house of work and everyday life. Venus is in your 4th, which is very pleasant for home and receiving people in your home, for having guests, for having we're doing renovations or decorations, just enjoying being at home, cocooning at home, maybe with your new partner. There you go. But of course, the South Node is there. And so the South Node also lends a certain amount of instability to what is home, a feeling of this is not lasting, it's going to change, or it needs to change, or in some way it's what home has been up until now, or what the family, or the way I'm integrating my relationships through my family. Something has to give. It's changing, and what's moving outwardly now and bringing you into a new vision for yourself is your ambitions and your career and what it is that you want to do. Now, Mars, of course, is ruling your 10th house and where the North Node is right now. So there can be something here that sparks your creativity. It's, again, that energy of the sun opposing Uranus is very creative, insightful energy, can be very helpful And maybe you're able to use that energy and apply it to your 10th house of career or social, whoops, sorry about that, social status. But yeah, so that Venus is cozy and helpful, but it comes with this feeling of it's not going to last. So that's okay. Just don't invest heavily in it. Enjoy it, let's say. Enjoy while it lasts. We have Saturn that has stationed now direct in your 9th house. And so there was this period of time where there was this kind of reviewing your sense of purpose. Things had slowed down since June. Having kind of put a brake on your sense of purpose or even an idea of how you should go forward, whether that be through teaching or studying or even foreign travel, kind of now at this point saying, okay, I get that now, I'm going to go more deeply towards this, or figure out that that's no longer the thing, I need to develop this other thing. And so that will help you, especially if you've got early degrees of anything in the water signs, early degrees Pisces or Cancer or Scorpio, that will help you to reorient yourself now that Saturn is moving direct. So the 9th house also involves the father. And so there may be some news around your father at this time, especially because Mercury is squaring Saturn. And that can be about news, something that needs to be done or supported or discussed around your father or teachers or important counselors in your life, for example. Right, we'll leave it there. Cancer, enjoy. This is a good time for you, good opportunity for you. I think the water signs are finding this energy easier to bear than many others. Leo, we have this happening in your house of home. So there's something new shaping up in your house of home. This will be the area that you felt quite a lot of change in the last year and a half or 2 years, basically from November of 2021. This is that area where you found an enormous amount of change because that's where the South Node has been going through. So all the eclipses were happening in your 4th house. And this new moon might be an opportunity for you to kind of gather up all that had happened during these eclipses and say, what next? What do I want now? What do I need psychologically? Keep in mind that Scorpio in the 4th house is about plumbing the depths of your psychological security, your emotional security. This can be about property, family, home. There's something here that is new, and you're regenerating, you're starting something over. Think of it in terms of what have I understood now over the last 2 years? What has changed? And what do I need to start again? What do I need to change? Perhaps also in terms of your own psychological support, whatever you need to feel happy, how it is that you need to go forward. We do have Saturn that is stationing direct in your 8th house of the unconscious mind. And that can also be something that shows you, especially since March, but most especially since June, you would have been calling back in some, questioning over fears and a sense of being alone, a sense of not being supported, a sense of not being secure, perhaps emotionally or psychologically, for some time, or in a relationship of importance, perhaps like a marriage or business partnership. You may have not been feeling connected or supported. Now something's more clear, and you're going forward. This can affect you materially through the house, the actual physical house and home that you live in, and through your family, of course, but also in that emotional, psychological way. I think you're probably doing well through it, though. Something is changing in terms of how you want to show up in the world. It's just not going to manifest yet. You're still working through that as well. That will not be really fully realized, I think, until January and even potentially March, where something really starts to shift for you. But let's say from January on, as Jupiter will be moving direct then through the 10th house. So Venus is in your 3rd. This is a lovely place to have relationships with siblings, with your neighbors, in general, with your neighborhood, changes in anything to do with education or travel plans are supported at this time. The North Node has you thinking quite a lot about what it is that you want from life, your higher sense of what life is all about, what's your purpose. And the South Node is suggesting that you move away from everyday stuff, everyday chit chat, everyday stuff. Pluto kind of is saying the same thing as it's leaving the sixth. Now it's saying, okay, we're done with this way of being day to day. We're going to move into something new as of January. So hang in there, Leo. I think you're in for some big change, something that will have you feeling more profound, having you feel much more connected to yourself, a deeper understanding of what you need to enjoy the life that you actually want, how you see yourself, what you feel your purpose to be. With that North Node in the ninth, ruled by this Mars on the new moon. So good luck, Leo. I will see you in the next video. Virgo, this is for Virgo sun, rising, and moon. And especially the rising sign, it will show up much more literally for you Virgos who like those things to be very precise. This is happening in your third house, and that can be something new happening in the area of business or around your siblings. If you've got brothers and sisters, this can be something that's going on in their experience of life. And most especially if there's a brother, and most especially if it's a younger brother, that tends to be the third house and Mars in the third. And something new is happening there that can affect your relationship or can affect their life and therefore your experience of that relationship. And this can also be about your neighborhood and about what's going on in your day-to-day connections with friends. That's a house of friends and cousins as well, relatives in general. So something new happening there. It's a house of exchanges of all kinds. And so there's some new dynamism happening in how you might be showing up in terms of how you express yourself, expressing yourself ideally in a nice way, because Mars in the third, especially Scorpio Mars, is potentially pretty sarcastic and a little bit sharp-tongued. So just be careful not to burn any bridges. Or maybe you do want to, because you've got Saturn going through the seventh and it's just stationed direct, and maybe now you know whose bridge you want to burn. I don't know. But either way, just give it a bit of thought. So we've got Mercury in Sagittarius in your fourth. You can feel emotionally impulsive. That might have you also reactive in terms of how you show up in the third house connections with people. There may be a new goal that you have set for yourself. No doubt anyway, in the longer term, you've got higher plans for yourself with Uranus and Jupiter both in your ninth house, but with Mars in the third, and especially at a new moon ruled by that Mars, conjunct that Mars, you are setting yourself some new goals. You have new ideas about what you want to see achieved in the near term. There may be some trigger for competition, a feeling of something new and invigorating that you want to experience, and this new moon can help you leapfrog that. There can be something quite deep and insightful that you realize around the time of this new moon. Uranus is in the ninth house, and Mars and the new moon are in the third house, both of which represent our ways of thinking and seeing the world. So there can be some really deep insights happening for you, which can be very, very helpful. Venus is in the second house, and that's good for money and also for recognizing what's important for you, what values are important. Saturn is in the seventh, as I mentioned, so that can create some kind of a shift in terms of important commitments in relationship. That can be business partnerships that are starting up, something new happening there. Saturn has gone back and forth in the early degrees, up to 7 degrees of Pisces. It's just a coincidence that the descendant is at 7. By the way, this is not the time of the new moon. It's just because I've been shifting the ascendant. But that happens to be where Saturn stationed retrograde in June. And so from 0 to 7 degrees, is where Saturn has already been. And in that time between March and now, you've discovered quite a lot about yourself in committed relationships, in contractual relationships, and what it is that you need from that, and who is worth your time, basically. And probably since June, during that retrograde, you would have had relationships come back to you in a way that was an improvement, let's say, or resolves perhaps some long-standing tricky situations, tricky issues. And if that's the case, that will only improve once Jupiter stations direct at the end of December. So coming up quite soon. All right, so good luck with all of that, Virgo. I will see you in the next video. So Libra, this is happening in your second house of money, and you've got your ruler Venus in your first house. So that's pretty cool. So you've got Venus in her sign, your sign, along with Mars in its own sign in the second house. So there's definitely a lot of issues around money happening at the moment for you. This, of course, can also have a very strong impact on your intimate relationships. So relationships of all kinds, not just the first and seventh axis, but the second and eighth axis. It does call in sexual intimacy, emotional, psychological intimacy. The second house also is family. And there might be something that is going on in terms of what supports you or what does not support you in family. There may have been a delay or some kind of renegotiation. I mean, you've got Uranus and Jupiter in the eighth house of other people's money, other shared resources, things coming from other people. And it's not that things won't come. It just means that it might be because they're retrograding, there's some delay or something that's either not working out the way you thought, and it's kind of slowed, or you've had to revise the notions of what's possible there. But that's a short-term thing. That definitely that situation will change as of January. In the meantime, with Mars and the new moon in the second, it's a good time to plan how you sort out your money, how you invest your money, how you maintain your assets, or whatever you need to feel financially secure or physically secure. So fourth house is your emotional security, your psychological or spiritual, even your sense of invisible security, let's say, or what makes you happy. Whereas the second house is what do you need to physically survive? And of course, nowadays we have way more than we need, but you can at least strip that back and start to look at what it is that you need to take more seriously, take action on. Mars is all about action. And especially as it's opposing Uranus from the 8th, there may be some surprise or some issue that comes up that you didn't realize you had to deal with. But now you're realizing it's going to be, you'll have to take that seriously. And so it might require an adjustment in terms of your expectations of income that's coming from work that you do or clients that you have, or your partner's income and stuff like that, that you need to respond to. Saturn is in your sixth house of everyday work, and it's just stationed direct on the 4th. So that can also have an impact on how you are seeing your future, or the things that you might consider to be important to take action on. Because that Saturn going through the 6th has you being very serious about your everyday work. Work may feel challenging, or it may feel like things were not quite working out the way you had hoped. There may have been some reconsideration around work, and now with Saturn moving direct, slowly, you're going to start to pick up a new sense of how your everyday life is taking shape through work, through your colleagues. There may be some situations that you found difficult, some tensions that you have found needed to be worked through. And now with Saturn moving direct through your 6th house of colleagues, employees, contracts, some challenges, you figured out a way through that, and you're going to find your way through that. So it's good to have the malefics. I mentioned this in terms of Mars being in the 6th. It's good to have malefics in the 6th house because they help you sort out the problems of the sixth house, the everyday stuff, the everyday challenges that can involve people who are not really supportive, or not, or whatever stuff causes you to have to deal with more issues. Mercury is in your third house, and that is that's Mercury loves being in the third house. It's where you're going to find quite a lot of activity that can be, especially if you're into business or commerce of any description, that's going to be really good for your money and money-making capacity. Because let's face it, this does seem to be somehow about money for you. That Mercury is also going to have you engaging in quite a lot of discussions. Maybe new contracts are being discussed, or maybe new ideas. Take this a little bit slow, because just at this time, with that opposition to Uranus, you'll be building in this instability into any new contracts. So if you can, just try and delay things a little bit. Just meaning by a few days, just so you don't want to have that opposition from Uranus to the Sun, Moon, and Mars built into a contract. So let's say from the 13th, try to go to the 15th, 16th, something like that, at least have that separating, maybe even later, if you can. Mercury in the third is very good for writing as well. So if you have anything that you need to do in terms of expressing yourself, teaching, writing, and so on, this would be a really good time to get that message out there. It's good for social media as well. Alas, because Mercury tends to have a big mouth in Sagittarius and tends to jump to conclusions or thinks it knows it all, do be careful what you post on social media. Be nice in the comments, especially because you're soon going to have Mars going through the third house. So when Mars and Mercury are in your third house, then watch out for that sharp tongue. So remember that Libra is learning the gift of diplomacy. It's not like you're born with it. So that doesn't mean that you don't have every now and then your slip-ups. So watch out for what you post, what you say, what you believe, as much as that. All right. So good luck with all of this, and I'll see you in the next video, Libra. Saturn, sorry, Scorpio, of course, you know this is about you. This is the new moon for Sun, Moon, and rising sign in Scorpio. So now you have the Sun, Moon, and Mars in your first house in Scorpio. So you're either having your birthday soon-ish, or the moon is coming back for its monthly visit in your first house, or this is working its way through your ascendant. And so either way, it's impactful. Even if it doesn't hit your ascendant by degree, you will feel this very strongly in terms of a desire for something new to come into your life, and in particular in that space between you and the other, the balance between you and relationships. Now, of course, if you do have any of those points, the Sun, Moon, or rising sign around 21 degrees, let's say give or take 2 or 3 degrees, let's say between 18 and 24, we could go as like 17 to 24, 5. That is going to be certainly going to be affecting you very personally, very strongly. So an opportunity for you to reset the clock, especially again, if this resonates with your solar return. If this is your solar return, this is a beautiful way for you to become more dynamic in the year ahead, to have a sense of more courage and strength in the year ahead. Now, already, if you've got Scorpio on the ascendant, you have chutzpah, you definitely have courage. You are equipped to deal with crisis. I have annoyed many a Scorpio in the past by saying that Scorpios tend to unconsciously attract crisis. And I'd have to say that with Mars in the first house, this can very, very likely show up in your life. So that desire for things to feel exciting all the time, you're going to have it in spades this November. So beware what you ask for, whether it's unconscious or conscious. And you have Uranus in opposition to all of this. And so be careful how things show up with your relationships. Notice as well which relationships feel reliable and which ones don't, and how are your relationships changing? In what ways are your relationships changing? And that will always bring you to a better place in relationships if you can work through whatever changes are necessary. Either the person you are or that the person you're with needs to change, make some changes, or the relationship itself needs to be restructured in some way. Either way, it's healthy for a relationship, especially if that's done consciously. So bear in mind that change can be very, very helpful, and especially since as a fixed sign, Scorpio, you might tend to push your way through things and just stay way too long in situations that are not necessarily good for you. Typically, Scorpio is very worried about its public image. Leo is on the 10th, is the 10th sign from the sun, or it's in the 10th house from the ascendant or moon. And so that image is very important to a Scorpio. And so there can be this stubbornness around change because you're ultimately, you don't want to have to be shown to seem to have failed or to seem to have done something wrong. Life is too short, Scorpio. So if things are not working out in relationships, or if things are not the way that you had hoped that they would be, this would be a good time to really wake up to that and take action. As I say, life is too short. You've got the North Node ruled by that Mars in the 6th house. So the North Node is saying also take care of your health, take care of your everyday life. Focus a lot on how you want your life to feel, how you want life to look for you in the most basic way, in the most simplistic sort of everyday way. That's changing. You would have had also a year and a half up until July of new energy in relationships. And so that's something that you can reflect on, because this new moon is kind of like the bookend to November 2021, when something already came to your awareness around relationships and how and your role in them. So think long and hard about this. This is asking you to make some really, really profound change. This is a relatively rare moment when we have, well, let's face it, it is a rare moment. We have the sun and the moon coming together. That's not rare, it's annual. But in this case, the moon and the sun are in opposition to Uranus. But Mars-Uranus oppositions happen only every 2 years. And so we have the opposition of the moon, which happens once a month, the opposition of the sun, which happens once a year, and the opposition of Mars to Uranus, which happens only every 2 years, and it's happening on the same day. So, so you're being asked to transform in terms of relationships in a very significant way. This is not a minor tweak. And so Scorpio, take it to heart and really, really look deeply at what you need to transform. Yeah, and since the South Node also is in the 12th house, there's something there for you to learn about letting go of the ways that you might sabotage yourself. And that's especially in the energy of Libra in relationships, in what you do for other people, for example, and in recognizing who's got your back, who's your friend, who's not your friend. And are you working in such a way that you're taking good care of yourself? Are you your own worst enemy? You also have Saturn in the 5th, at the same time as you're having all this confusion in relationship. And Saturn has just stationed direct. So Saturn in the 5th combined with Neptune, which is retrograde for now quite some time, it can feel like it's difficult to access love. It's difficult to access your feelings. You maybe not so clear anymore about feeling a little blocked, maybe in terms of your self-expression or in terms of your love expression. But now, as Saturn has gone through this whole passage of the first 7 degrees of Pisces since March, so especially since June, you would have reconsidered quite a lot of whatever it is that you've been reflecting on. And that's especially true if you have any planets or points in the first 7 degrees of the water signs. So that's your sign, Scorpio, and then Pisces or Cancer. So Saturn is showing you again what it is that you need in terms of your self-expression, in terms of your love expression. This can also be something to do with your children. So if something needs to be, maybe your children have gone through some difficulties and they're figuring it out and they're moving forward in a way that is unlocking some of the stuckness of the past 7 months or so, certainly the past 4 months. So this will feel like there's some momentum building as we go towards the end of the year. And certainly from January, when Jupiter stations direct in your 7th, that will also build a lot more momentum and find that you're getting unstuck and you're becoming more clear around whatever it is that's going on in relationships. Keeping in mind that also in January, you've got Pluto moving into your 4th, which is significant. We're going to be talking about that again and again because it's quite significant. Pluto moving into the 4th will potentially also transform relationships, and especially where you live, how you live, what makes you feel secure physically and emotionally in terms of your property or in terms of your family, in terms of your sense of grounding. So I could go on and on. It's a lot for you, Scorpio. Listen to the introduction as well, if you haven't already. There's a lot there for Scorpio energy to take in. And I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video. Sagittarius, this is happening, and this is for a sun, moon, or ascendant sign in Sagittarius. This is happening in your 12th house. And the 12th house is this place of what we don't see, everything that seems hidden from us. That can be issues that we're not conscious of, and that can also be even to the extent of dreams, being literally dreaming. It can also be things that we are dealing with behind the scenes, things that are intimate, things that might involve other people in a secret way, whether legitimate or not, secrets and things that are being kept out of sight are in the 12th house, similar to the 8th house. The 12th house is also ancestors. It's people who are far away in faraway lands or very distant shores, and potentially also people who have passed on. So there's a strong connection to all of that here in the 12th house for Sagittarius rising. Your ruler is in the 6th house. It's up in the sign opposite to this new moon and Mars, and Uranus is there in the 6th, almost exactly opposite this new moon, and very strongly opposite Mars at the same time. So there is something here in that 6th and 12th house axis, which is about your health and healing. There can be something of a mental health or spiritual health crisis. Saturn has been going through your 4th house, and that it depends on each individual, but that can feel like a real weight, a real sense of things being heavy, things requiring a lot of reform, a lot of analysis or understanding. Saturn basically since March has been in your 4th house, and since June has been retrograde. And now Saturn is back to the place that it was essentially in the 2nd week of March. And it's now recovering territory as it slowly goes forward, recovering territory that it started to backtrack over since June. And by February, it will be back where it ended up in June. So you're going over some things personally that are about your overall security, and especially as the new moon is in the 12th house, this can have to do with some emotional connection to potentially someone you have lost, whether that be recent or long ago, but there's some kind of sense of needing to stabilize after this loss. It can be potentially a financial loss as well, but not necessarily so. It can be more of a spiritual or a human loss, let's say an emotional loss. That loss can also be even that somebody moved away, not necessarily that they passed away. But with Saturn going through the 4th house, there's a lot of the energy of needing to create a new foundation. Now it's moving forward again with whatever you've learned since March, and you're needing to create a new foundation. And the foundation you establish for yourself now, Sagittarius, is going to be on display, let's say 15 years from now, when you see the results of this foundation that you've laid and it starts to show in the world and the way the world sees you, then when Saturn crosses through your 10th. So this is a really key time for you, a good time with the new moon in the 12th to understand any self-sabotage, any things that you do that are not in your best, what's the word? Not in your best interest. Jupiter and Uranus are changing your everyday life. And so because that Jupiter is ruling Saturn, I do think this can have something to do with your work. But it may simply just be about your personal, attitude, how things are shaping up for you, and how you need to make changes that work better for you going forward. More stability, perhaps. So Mercury is ruled by Jupiter in your 6th, and Mercury rules your 10th. So I do think there is something here very strongly about your attitude, your mindset as regards your work. And since Mercury also rules your relationships or business partners, there can also be an effect there in that sense as well. But this is very personal to you, so no finger pointing. You can't say it's about the other. This is something that's coming up through you. The 12th house is hidden enemies, and that can be other individuals. It can be people who are not really supporting you in some way or another, but that hidden enemy could actually be you. Keep that in mind, that you're the one who is your own worst enemy, not necessarily other people. So Sagittarius, this is a big, big moment of change for you. You're coming up on the next month where your birthday will come up if you are Sagittarius sun or sun, and otherwise if you're a Sagittarius rising, then you're going to have the new moon in your 1st house. So it's a fresh new cycle. So this is a great cycle for a sense of really deep transformation, really interesting opportunity, because basically in December, then when you have that new moon, you're just really close to then your ruler stationing direct again, and things will really start to lift off. So if you're feeling a little bit down, if you're feeling a little grim, if you're feeling you've lost your usual Sagittarian sense of hope, then hang in there, because I think by the end of December, certainly into January, you're going to be feeling a lot better. And all the more so for having understood yourself more deeply in that 12th house. Right, good luck, Sagittarius. I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, this is happening in your 11th house of friends and your future, your dreams for your hopes and dreams for your future. A really interesting time for you to explore what is new, or how you want to engage in a new way, perhaps in society or with future objectives, especially because Saturn is now in your house of everyday goals, and it's stationing direct. It has just shifted direct, Saturn being your ruler, especially if you are the ascendant in Capricorn, that is your chart ruler. Otherwise, it's ruling your sun or moon. And Saturn in the 3rd is giving you this feeling of momentum in this really strong energy that is already coming through your house of the future and social groups and so on. 3rd house also has that quality of society, but in that limited, in that everyday kind of way, the people that you connect with every day. That can include siblings, it can include like your neighbors or cousins or relatives outside the home. So we have this really strong pull in a new direction, something new, and it's coming from the 5th house of creativity, but potentially also your children. So something that might be going on in their lives that is then establishing something new out in terms of how you show up in the world, or your own goals based on what your kids are up to. Let's say if you're an empty nester, for example, and the kids are gone, it's like, oh, there's me. I got to do this thing now, something different out in the world. No more school runs. I'm now doing whatever, golfing. But I think that probably won't show up too strongly for you until Jupiter and Uranus are direct again. So this is certainly a great time to plan based on how you're feeling in terms of your own creativity and how you want to show up in that. So Mars is very good for Scorpio. Sorry, of course it rules Scorpio. So Mars is very good for Capricorn because it's actually exalted in Capricorn. And so we can still look to Mars and say, well, not only is this in its own sign, but it's exalted, so very strong for Capricorn. And that can have you acting in a way that is super dynamic, taking charge of a situation. Just be careful being too bossy in social groups. But with Venus in the 10th, you'll probably have enough charm and benevolence coming from people that you work with or the people around you that it'll actually be okay. That Mars is also ruling your 4th house and rules the North Node, currently going through that 4th house since July. So much against your nature, Capricorn, you're meant to be putting a lot of your attention on your growth, your personal growth, your home and family. It could literally mean that you're looking for a new house, or that you're hoping to move. That depends on your ascendant degree, for example, and how that might square the node, because these nodes are squaring Capricorn. So something there is going to be a big shift for Capricorns. But that North Node in the 4th is ruled by this sense of what is new in the 11th, what your goals are, or in terms of your future, your vision for the future, the way you connect with people. That can also be potentially income from whatever it is that you do. But that North Node in the 4th is much more internal, and it's more focused on what do I need to establish myself, my foundation for myself, rather than what do I want in my career. So it's less based on ambition and success and drive. So it's not so much your usual thing, but it's much more about your personal needs, your personal, intimate, meaning psychologically intimate or emotionally intimate needs, let's say. So give that a lot of thought at this time as well. So while you're putting together this vision for your future, include your innermost needs, rather than thinking in terms of like planning for your career, because this is not really where the energy is meant to be. All right. So Capricorn, good luck with all of that. I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, this is in your 10th house of career. So a new moon happening for Aquarius, sun, moon, or rising in the 10th house of career is really powerful, especially because Saturn, your ruler, has just stationed direct in the 2nd house of money and earned income. So it seems like there may have been an opportunity for, this may be the opportunity for things to get unstuck. Now you've got Venus also in a trinal house to you. So Venus is in the other air sign of Libra, and that brings good luck. The trinal houses are fortunate, they're lucky. Venus loves being in the 9th. So that's a lot of ideas and creative notions, connections with people on a high level, very supportive energy. And as Saturn is really has gone through a lot of exploration around your values and around how you're using your money and how you might fear a lacking resources. This is a really great opportunity for you to then set about new ambitions, having a sense of what is new for you in terms of how you want to show up in the world. Even if you're not working, whether you're not working by choice or you're retired, let's say, or even if you're unemployed, this will set up a new sense of what are my ambitions, what is my main drive here. And this is all the more so because you've got the North Node in the 3rd, which is about your goals and about a feeling of wanting something to change. And what am I ready to change? So there's a lot here that expresses some really new opportunity for you in terms of work and career and your finances as well, which can be really beneficial. So Jupiter is still, along with Uranus, still retrograde in your 4th house. And that can be still a little bit rocky because that Jupiter is ruling Saturn, your ruler, in the 2nd. And that can have the feeling of still not being quite settled or still not being quite sure. Maybe you're on the road to being sure, but it's not working out yet. That can be about a home, physical house, residence, or property that you own. Can be around family, because also second house is family too. That's what you might not be feeling supported by family, or you might need to support your family. Although now that will be improving, and especially so when Jupiter stations direct itself at the end of 2023. So you may still be feeling a little unstable in terms of your what you need to feel secure, let's say, overall. But there's definitely a shift in this mid-month energy. There's a big shift here. That shift was ongoing, but probably felt very unstable for the last 2 years. Probably felt like quite a lot to have to deal with over the last 2 years. But this is, I think, the last kind of sense of a push, something new coming in to how you show up in the world, and can be very, very helpful for you, I'd say. And that moon, of course, rules the 6th house of work as well. So from the 10th house of career, that does suggest something new cycle in many, many ways for you with regards to your work and everyday life. So yeah, so good luck with that, Aquarius. It's looking like a big new opportunity, but it may not yet feel settled. So hang in there. It's definitely going to increasingly feel more settled as the weeks go towards the end of the year. All right, see you in the next video. The Pisces, this is quite good for you because you are a water sign, Pisces sun, moon, or rising. The new moon conjunct Mars is happening in your 9th house, and that is trine to you. That's a very supportive energy. It's a dynamic flow of energy, and so there can be something of a new realization in terms of your belief, your worldly belief, your philosophical belief, spiritual or religious ideas of life. It can be also new drive or ambition around your sense of purpose, what it is that you feel you want to do in this life. Can be also, on a more banal level, it can be something to do with travel, a project for travel. Where do you want to go? How do you want to move around in terms of long distance travel? And usually it's travel with a purpose. So this can be some new information. Now, there can be something surprising that happens. There may be some shift that causes some disruption in travel around the time of this new moon. Lord knows, there's enough going on in the world that travel should be disrupted every now and then. So hopefully for you, that's not something terribly disruptive. But from the 9th to the 3rd, that Uranus opposition could provoke some challenges in travel around that time. So maybe best not to, if you could avoid it, not to travel around that time, or travel with caution. This can be very dynamic in terms of teaching or expressing your ideas, expressing what you believe in. This potentially could have something to do with your father. The 9th is the house of father. And so there might be something new in your father's life, some news coming from your father, or some new energy in your relationship to your father. Mars, of course, is also ruling your 2nd house of money. So whatever is going on here in terms of the 9th house, travel, the new project that you have, a new sense of purpose, new perspective on your life, that's going to be feeding into this 2nd house of your values and your income, and what you generate in terms of your income and your own skills or resources. And that's where the North Node has you focusing quite a lot of your attention right now. So really interesting time to start new projects. Bear in mind, listen to the introduction. Don't jump in on the day of the new moon. Ideally, you want to sit with the new ideas and let them steep a little bit over a couple of days, and then you start bring it out into the world. Venus is in your 8th house, so it looks like there's support from other people, but Venus is coming up to conjunct the South Node. And she will do so, I think it was the 29th of November. So that can also prove to be a lack of support or a sense of letting go of relations or letting go of a source of income, or a change around your values in terms of money or what you share with another person. An income or money that comes in from clients that is just done. You're just done with it. Venus is quite strong for Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces, so usually can bring you some good news. It depends on whether you have a day chart or a night chart, but still very helpful. What else have we got here? Yeah, and of course, Saturn has stationed direct in your first house. And this is going to come as a relief. It would have been, there would have been a feeling of a lot of change and a lot of pressure since March, particularly so since June, as things may have felt like they were just stuck and at a standstill with nothing really happening. And now we've got Saturn back to the same place that it was roughly at the second week of March. And here you have a chance to kind of start over again and say, well, what was the thing that I was procrastinating on, not taking responsibility for, that I need to develop now? And how will I go forward with that? And now the energy, as it picks up going through February to get back to that same place it stopped in June, is going to give you a lot more opportunities to feel, take on responsibility, feel more of your own integrity, clarify yourself in terms of boundaries and how it is that you want to show up in the world, take on more responsibility in general for things that you may up until this point not have felt you were capable of, but indeed you are. So good luck with all of that, Pisces. I will see you in the next video.